Hello there and happy Friday. We are headed into another summer weekend and we're headed in for some beautiful weather, and it's causing me to think about a common situation that many of my clients have trouble with, and not just clients, these are things that friends and relatives have talked to me about as well, is how hard it can be navigating these fun, celebratory summer social eating situations that are often, lasting a couple of hours and non-structured, and there's a lot of food going on, and how overwhelming that can feel. So I want to talk about that a little bit in today's video blog, but I'm going to start out by telling you a short story that will feel like it doesn't relate, but I promise it does, about a friend of mine who happens to also be a therapist. And not too long ago, she had her first baby. And we met together, and she was telling me about her experience of her labor and her delivery, and the challenges of what that situation was for her. And it was really funny because as she was telling me about this, she said, Marcy, I really just kind of hunkered down, closed my eyes, and used my DBT skills to get through it. And I just DBT'd the heck out of that labor and delivery. So for those of you who don't know what DBT is, it stands for dialectical behavioral therapy. Related but kind of different is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. And these are different therapeutic approaches that use different skills. Some are geared towards working on your thoughts and finding thoughts that are effective. Some are different strategies to kind of manage your emotional experience. And really, these tools are meant to help you to be able to manage difficult situations and kind of manage life stuff in a more effective way. And I was just so impressed by her willingness to be totally open and authentic about, yes, she's a therapist, but she too needs to utilize skills to get through life's challenges. For her, it was kind of an extreme example of her labor and delivery. But, I think that it's very similar, that often people are surprised when I share with them that I too use these CBT and DBT skills to get through tough stuff, and maybe just daily stuff, right? And so it's no different for those of you who maybe find going to a summer potluck kind of challenging, to kind of go, be present, to have a fun time, to enjoy the food, but without the food becoming something that feels problematic. Most people hope to be able to go enjoy the food and not overdo it, but in those situations, it's really easy to overdo it. I think it's easy for most people to overdo it. When you have a huge array of food that tastes really good, it's hard not to eat beyond what your body actually needs, but it is possible. And it's possible if you go in knowing yourself and planning out some strategies that are going to work best for you. So what I suggest you do before your next social eating situation, if this is something that is tough for you, is to first maybe sit down and really think about, either write out or just kind of think in your mind's eye, what are the top two or three things that set you up to overdoing it with food? And you know what that answer is, and just kind of write those two or three things down. And those are going to be the things that you work on building strategies around. And so perhaps for you, you feel uneasy in a social situation. So maybe you do a little bit of prep work on one or two topics you plan to talk about. Or maybe, you have a friend who's going to be at that social gathering, and you can maybe let them know you're feeling a little bit anxious and kind of come up with a game plan with that friend. Maybe you plan to be there for a certain period of time, and you remind yourself that you're only going to be there for an hour and a half, and you can manage it for an hour and a half, and you kind of find some positive mantras to draw from. Maybe it's really hard for you to manage having a lot of open access to food, and it feels really overwhelming. Perhaps you can share that struggle with a friend or a partner. Perhaps your strategy is to commit to yourself that you are going to only eat food that is put on a plate, and you're only going to eat when you're sitting down, rather than standing next to a table and picking, which is, really tempting to do. Maybe you're going to commit to keeping some structure in your eating because it's an overwhelming situation, and you say, I'm going to be there from 1 to 4, and my windows of time to eat, and make sure that you get enough to eat. I'm certainly not suggesting that you put yourself in a situation where you feel deprived, but say, what, between 1 and 1:30 is my window of time to have lunch, and then I'm going to have another snack maybe between 3:30 and 4, and you kind of structure it that way. So try to think about what your most vulnerable points are, And then think about what are thoughts that you need to challenge, maybe unhelpful thoughts that set you up for sabotage. Maybe there are black and white thoughts, black and white thinking that sets you up. Maybe there's kind of over catastrophizing that you get into, and maybe try to work on challenging those so you have one or two positive coaching mantras to draw on when you're in that moment. Maybe it's more behavioral, and maybe you need to be able to put some kind of behavioral strategies, like I mentioned, like eating and sitting down, or putting the food on the plate. And maybe it has more to do with managing your kind of emotions, and maybe you kind of take a moment in a social situation where you get a little bit of alone time. Maybe you step into the restroom, maybe you take a walk around the block just to kind of chill out. So try to think, and I tend to use a CBT frame where we're looking at thoughts, behaviors, and feelings, and look at those top 2 or 3 things that set you up and see how you can really plan and strategize so that your next eating adventure, your next social summer situation is a positive one. So I hope you have a lot of fun this summer and that you're able to enjoy all of the awesome socializing that tends to come up in the summertime. And I hope this blog post has been helpful for you. Alrighty, take care.